Hello, welcome to Addressing Harassment at ACM Events Volunteer Training. My name is Valerie Aurora. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I work for Frameshift Consulting. So the ACM policy against harassment applies to all ACM events, publications, and communications. You can read more about that in the policy itself. Your role as a volunteer leader is to help enforce the policy. Without you, the policy is just words. So this training will teach you what harassment is and how to spot it, what to do about harassment at events that you are leading, and how to report harassment to the ACM. So disclaimers, there's a lot of them. This is not legal advice. You need to use your best judgment to make decisions about what to do in these situations. This is just an overall training, and I am not responsible for your decisions. Any organizational rules, any local laws, things that your superiors tell you, rules of the venue, all of that override anything in this training. The intended audience is volunteer conference leaders, people in a position of responsibility in a volunteer position at ACM events. This training will also contain brief mentions of physical assault, sexual assault, racism, violence, and other forms of oppressive language and behavior, but we will not go into details. Just a little bit about me. My name is Valerie Aurora. I wrote the free ebook, How to Respond to Code of Conduct Reports. If you do need to go into more detail on any aspect of enforcing codes of conduct, you can take a look at that. I spent over 10 years doing code of conduct work, teaching people ally skills, doing executive DEI coaching, things like that. And I'm a former software engineer working on the Linux kernel and file systems. All right, I'm not going to define these terms. I'm just giving you a heads up. I'm going to use them interchangeably. So I might say policy, I might say code of conduct, I might say events or spaces or conferences, offender or harasser, perpetrator sometimes, target or victim, incident or violation. There's a lot of disagreement about which terms to use. I'm just going to use them interchangeably. All right, so here's just a quick overview of some of the behaviors that are not allowed in ACM spaces. Abuse, which includes stalking, threatening, and intimidation. Discriminatory harassment, that might be discrimination based on race, age, disability, or other categories. Or sexual harassment, which includes unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, sexual coercion, things like that. The policy has a longer list of things that are not allowed. So we'll go through a couple of examples to work through how to figure out whether behavior is against the policy or not. So we'll look at these two examples, making sexist comments on social media covered by the ACM policy, or pointing out that someone made sexist comments on social media covered by the ACM policy, perhaps repeatedly. So let's take a look at the policy. Remember to take a look at the updated policy for the most recent version. This policy applies to all ACM activities, including conferences, communications sent through communication channels associated with ACM, including social media. Discriminatory harassment, any conduct that discriminates or denigrates an individual on the basis of sexual or gender identity. There's a lot more to the policy, but those are the parts that are relevant. So under this, making sexist comments on social media covered by the ACM policy would not be allowed, but pointing out that somebody had done that would be allowed. One more example, saying that people of the dominant race benefit from systemic racism at a conference lunch, or reporting the previous comment as racism. So from the policy, we find this policy applies to all ACM activities, including conferences. Discriminatory harassment includes discrimination or denigration on the basis of race. And it's also not allowed to make a false allegation of harassment. So going back to our examples, saying that people of the dominant race benefit from systemic racism, that's just stating a fact without approving of it or denigrating any particular person. We need to be able to talk about systemic oppression in order to fight it. Reporting the previous comment as racism, if you understand that this is not racism, and it isn't, that would be a false allegation, so it's not allowed. All right, so here's an overview of your responsibilities as a volunteer leader at an ACM event. We'll go into more detail on each of these. So prepare before the event to support the policy. At the event, listen to people with concerns. If immediate action is necessary, you just use judgment and take what action is necessary. And if you or the person who's witnessed the event is willing, help them report it to the ACM. All right, I just want to talk a little bit about why formal reports are important. So as a volunteer event organizer, your knowledge and your ability to do things are limited. You are in charge of this event and may or may not know what happened at other events and may or may not be able to affect things at other events. The formal reports allow the ACM to take action outside of events, across events, make long-term decisions, identify patterns, ban people from all events, things like that. So your report helps. Before the event, start by reading the ACM policy against harassment at ACM activities. This will help you figure out pretty quickly if something is a problem at your event, if it's not allowed by the ACM policy. It helps too to inform attendees in advance about the policy and how to report violations. So you can, for example, include links and emails about the event. You can also include links to those two items in the event website. Be supportive of the policy in your public communications. People are much more likely to come to you with code of conduct reports if you, as a volunteer, have you supported it publicly. Finally, there's an ACM prepared slide about the policy you can use. During the event, you should listen to concerns from attendees carefully and attentively. It may or may not be a policy violation. It's your job to be sympathetic and listen to what people are saying and try to figure out whether it is a policy violation. The most important thing is to get information and enough information to know whether immediate action is necessary. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. Do not impose help on people who don't want it. So an important thing to keep in mind is that you may be very anxious and eager to be helpful, but sometimes the help you are offering isn't the help that is going to be the best for that person. Your job isn't to mediate or resolve complaints. It's not your job to fix disagreements between people or make people happy with the response. You're just trying to take immediate action to keep people safe and then potentially file a report. And that is a thing that you can help people with. If immediate action is necessary, I will remind you this is not legal advice and you need to use your best judgment and take into account local laws, your own well-being, other people's well-being, rules in the organization, things like that. As a general guideline, only call security, medical assistance, or law enforcement if requested by the person who is targeted. If someone is in imminent danger, regardless of whether they requested or not, or if you're legally required to, you might be a mandated reporter, for example. Then take the minimum necessary action for safety or preventing further harassment. So this might include, for example, saying that someone can no longer attend the rest of the event. Then the next step is, if you need to intervene in an ongoing situation, we'll talk a little bit more about the various options you have. The first thing to do is to think about power relationships, safety, who might be retaliated against. It might be you, it might be the target of harassment, it might be someone else. And then choose an option that works, that makes the most sense for you. So distraction is nice because it's less chance of retaliation overall, and it's a great way to get more information about whether harassment is occurring at all. So if you have a couple of phrases ready to go to talk to the person you think might be the target of harassment, something like, can I ask you where you got your laptop bag? How are you liking the conference? Sometimes you can pretend that you know them. For example, you could say, oh, your friends are looking for you. If you have a minute, I can take you to where they are. So this is a way to get someone out of somebody's presence. You can ask the target to show you in person how to get somewhere, like the bathroom. You can make conversation with the harasser. This, of course, is likely to end in them being angry with you and rude to you, but if you're okay with that, it's a great thing to be able to do. So if you don't feel like you can handle this by yourself, that's often smart. You can get help. So think about who is nearby, who more powerful, easy to reach, somebody who has more practice with this situation. So venue staff is often quite experienced with helping to deal with harassers. In particular, people who work in food service at a bar, who work for a hotel, who are security, things like that. They might be able to help you. Other event organizers, you should have their contact information with you, and you can reach out. Any other people you trust and you know you can rely on. And then work together as a group if at all possible. It's much easier to handle situations when there's multiple people on your side. All right. Another option is confrontation. So again, safety first. It might feel good to confront someone. It might feel necessary, but if you're going to make things more dangerous or more difficult or more likely for somebody, either you or someone else, to experience retaliation, really think twice about it. So you can practice a different set of sentences for this situation. So you can ask something like, what are you doing? Or you can tell people, we don't do that here. Or you can tell someone how you feel about what they're doing. When people do behavior, I don't like it. This is transferring the person's attention to yourself. Again, think very carefully about this and whether it's the right response to the situation. It's usually better to distract, get help, other things like that. All right, finally, report, if at all possible, if there's somebody who agrees to do it, and report it to the ACM. The ACM will investigate and take any longer term action necessary. All right, so I want to talk about a few more complex issues, such as what if the direct target says the harassment is okay? What if someone is drinking? Or what if the reporter wants to be anonymous? All right, so sometimes the direct target will say that whatever they're experiencing is okay. So the background to this is that people often think of harassment as a conflict between two people, but really it's about behavior that affects the entire community far more than say two people who are interacting. So an example would be a straight person who uses a homophobic slur at an ACM event. And then they have a queer friend who says, oh, I have no problem with that. This is just how we talk to each other. However, other people are going to hear it and think, oh, homophobia is tolerated at this event. So I do think it is very important to listen to targets. They often have important information and context on what is happening. But when it comes down to deciding whether a thing is acceptable within the community, that's not actually their sole responsibility. The community as a whole decides, and that's what the policy is for, is to set a standard. So what if someone is drinking? There's a couple of cases here, whether it's the person doing the harassing or the target who is being harassed. So I just want to start with some research. A whole lot of excellent, well-designed studies show that the physiological effects of alcohol are clumsiness, sleepiness, lower problem-solving ability, and memory loss sometimes. Everything else that you may associate with drinking alcohol as a physical response of alcohol is not. It's culturally learned. That includes violence, sexual advances, rude comments, anything like that. It's all, people behave differently based on what they believe is acceptable when they are drunk. Drunk people can follow the policy against harassment. There's nothing in the policy against harassment that a drunk person is physiologically incapable of doing. You can read more about this topic at this link. So the short version is, okay, say somebody claims that they can't follow the policy against harassment when they're drunk. In that case, they shouldn't drink at all. It is still their responsibility not to drink. Events can send messages about what behavior is socially acceptable. when people are drinking by the way that they present alcohol. So for example, if you limit alcohol, have it be, say you have tickets, or you don't serve alcohol at all, or you have a lot of non-alcoholic options, you only serve alcohol with food. There's a bunch of the kind of alcoholic drinks you serve. All of that will send people messages about what is socially acceptable for them to do when they are drunk. Finally, targets don't deserve harassment because they are drunk, or if they are wearing certain clothes, if they're out late, if they're alone, anything like that. People should be able to drink and be drunk and wear whatever clothes they want, all that sort of thing, without being harassed, period. All right, what if the reporter wants to be anonymous? People have many valid reasons to stay anonymous. They might include retaliation. They often don't have any choice about who controls their career advancement, and if that person, the person they want to report, has an influence on their career, they may not wish to do it. Don't pressure them to break their anonymity, but anonymous reports are possible to file. They are harder to investigate, it is true, but if you get enough anonymous reports, the organization can put them together and identify patterns and make changes. So an anonymous report is better than no report, and you should encourage that. All right, so there are a few more ACM resources you should be aware of. The policy itself, then there are specific instructions on how to report violations of the policy. And if you have any further questions, you can email advocate@acm.org. All right, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate your attention.